What is going on, everybody? We are back, frontstretch.com, for another post-race conversation from the Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey at Laguna Seca, or should I say, technically from Zoom, because we were not able to get anybody out to the track this weekend. But come hell or high water, there will be a post-race conversation, and this is that post-race conversation. Alex Gintz, Christopher DeHarde, Tom Blackburn here for Front Stretch Open Wheel. Tom, I'm going to start with you. This was a typical IndyCar race in the fact that it was great. Alex Palou wins. Colton Herta gets a much needed second place finish. Alexander Rossi finally gets another podium for Arrow McLaren. In one sentence, how would you describe this race?
Just a complete taking advantage of the fact that that pit strategy that Palou did, they were able to capitalize on the fact that it was kind of the underdog strategy and still made it work for them. They were able to pass Colton Herta, stretch the lead out during that second stint before they pitted. Just a fabulous effort and just consistently good work by Chip Ganassi Racing.
How about you, Christopher? How do you assess the action from Monterey?
Alex Palou basically showed everyone once again why he is one of the best racing drivers on planet Earth. Um, his stint running in the middle of the race there was absolutely incredible. For him to get another win like that with the drive that he did was absolutely remarkable. And Colton Herta, many props to him because he never gave up. In fact, his fastest lap of the race was actually on the last lap of the
Mhm.
race. He did a tremendous job the whole way through. And someone else that we'll bring up now, just right off the podium. My sidebar is about Romain Grosjean. He started finished fourth. A great job for him. That's Juncos Hollinger Racing's best ever IndyCar result. So overall, it was a good day for a lot of people, but a bad day for some people that really did not need bad days.
Oh yeah, for sure. Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin even. It was a really rough turnaround for Team Penske, who dominated and swept the top three spots at Road America last time out. But to come back to that Colton Herta point for a moment, this has been a very, Christopher, you were there, a very up and down post Indy run for Colton Herta. Guys, what does this mean? I'll start with you, Christopher, to put himself back on the podium. He wasn't very excited. This is a driver who cares about wins that we're talking about, but still, points are points. And what does that momentum mean for him or just for Andretti Global at large?
So a lot of people forget after the disqualifications from St. Petersburg, Colton Herta actually led the IndyCar standings for a little bit. Right now, he's fourth in points. He is 68, I think, behind Palou right now. If my math is correct, I'm just doing quick math on the spot here, everybody. So if it's not right, please let me know. Um, this was a great result for Colton. And really, the thing that I think a lot of people should take away from this is, in my opinion, Colton did everything he could possibly do in this race. There wasn't anything he could have done to beat Alex in this race unless he somehow got around him on that late restart when Alex spun the tires as he was coming out of the final corner. Um, Colton, unfortunately, he had to deal with a lot after Road America. We all know why. That's all said and done. But I think this result was a great way for the California native to put the first bit of the season behind him as we look forward to Mid-Ohio coming up, a track that he's also won at once in 2020. This is a much needed result for Colton, and especially one where he really didn't do anything wrong. He didn't really have anything majorly bad go on with him. It was a fantastic race for him, and that's what he needed.
Right behind Colton on the podium was Alexander Rossi, somebody who made the move to Arrow McLaren for 2023. There was a lot of hype around him, especially after how the last bit of his tenure at Andretti Global went. And so far, before this weekend, that partnership had yielded only one podium finish on the IMS road course in May of 23. And Rossi was very similar to Herta in the sense that he was excited to be on the podium, however excited you can be, but there was still a lack of satisfaction for Rossi that this had taken so long. And this is a driver who, for a period was the force to be reckoned with in the IndyCar series. And now we're still waiting to find out if he's going to have a spot at McLaren next year. And frankly, with how that team has conducted themselves over the past week and a half or so, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that most people don't want to put any faith in anything involving Euro McLaren right now. Tom, similar to Herta, what does this mean for Rossi or for the team, especially both of these podium finishers that didn't win have had such a hard time in their relationships with their teams and with the media. What does this do for Rossi?
That's a great question, Alex. Rossi is kind of ran around the top five in that sixth, seventh, eighth range. And for him to get this podium is a good jump start if they're able to capitalize on it. They have ran well this year. Rossi was very competitive at Indianapolis, and he was in the hunt for it at the end there, but then Pato was the better finishing McLaren at the end of the day. So heading into this race, Rossi had led 13 laps. He led 10 laps today. He got out front. Some of that has to do with the fact that he qualified very well. That's what they have to work on to get better at. They need to be up there on that front row. They need to be there for, first, second, third, fourth, somewhere up there so they can then be in a better position to manage jumping those 3 or 4 extra spots to lead more and then get closer to hopefully pacing the field and winning races. That is McLaren's issue. They are not up front enough to use a third place finish as momentum to build for the rest of the season, whether it's Pato, whether it's Alexander Rossi. They're only separated by 10 points right now in the championship, sixth and seventh. So they can build on this. Rossi has some really good tracks coming up. He's won at Mid-Ohio before, but with the whole hybrid and everything coming up, we'll see how McLaren ends up. It seems like they have a great race, and then the next race, something happens.
Yeah, it's a very tough time to be what is supposed to be one of the top three teams in the series, or at least they would be if they had their way. But many things would be different if they had their way. All three of us might be on the grid if that were the case. Um, not for McLaren, given how things have gone recently, but that's another point.
Hey, we would get on the grid for one race, it looks like, for McLaren, and then we would probably get fired.
Oh no.
Don't cancel us, please.
Right. Demonetized.
Yeah.
So, Christopher, we're continuing on this theme of drivers that just need a performance, and you mentioned Romain Grosjean has taken Hugo Hollinger Racing's best finish ever,
Yep.
beating out the fifth place scored by Marcus Armstrong twice. Another
Tell
team,
my
Callum Ilott, that's right. My goodness, why was I thinking of Marcus? I'm always thinking of Marcus Armstrong.
To be fair to Marcus Armstrong, until he had his late issue, he was running pretty well in the top 10 through most of the race. It's just a shame what happened with him later on in the race, but he was running well, so I won't fault you for that.
And very fortunate that he got out of that incident without a major accident happening.
Yes,
Very
yes.
scary. Another driver who just needs to be clocking in those performances, but I'm sure we'll catch up with him sooner than later. Romain Grosjean bests Callum Ilott's best finish of fifth twice with a fourth place at Laguna Seca after having a bit of a tumultuous exit from Andretti Global, another team, funnily enough, that has been involved in too much controversy as of late. I hate to ask again. We know what this means for Grosjean to an extent, but if you could extend on that, as well as what does this mean for Hugo Hollinger Racing to be emerging at the front a bit more with a driver of Grosjean's caliber?
Juncos Hollinger Racing has had a bit of a shaky last couple of months, to put it bluntly. They've had a lot of social media issues with Augustine Canapino and the issue with Teo Porcher at Detroit, and then everything that went down with Augustine Canapino at Road America. And there were a lot of people that really were not looking at them in the same light that they did several years ago when Ricardo Juncos' team first made it to IndyCar racing. This was a very, very, very much needed result for the team. Um, but really, this was probably the most complete weekend that the team has put together in quite a while. In fact, Augustin Canapino was third fastest in today's warm-up session before the race, and Grosjean, I think, was ninth. And now Grosjean finished fourth, and Canapino, I'm looking at him, he's finished 18th. So yeah, he finished down from where he started. But when you consider, you know, where he was last year and how he was brand new to open wheel racing, not too terrible, but he could have finished a lot better. Believe he might have had a late race penalty for avoidable contact. Yes, he did. He had a drive through for avoidable contact late in the race that unfortunately brought him down a few positions. He was running actually right where he started in 13th when he had to make that drive through in the pits. But look, finished with all four wheels on the car, didn't put a wheel wrong except for the contact that sent Kevin Simpson spinning late in the race. But this is, like I said, this is a much needed result for the team to kind of put everything from Detroit and Road America behind them. So great job from the team overall, except for that one little incident late in the race, but we'll get into that later.
And I'm sure for Grosjean too, we're not used to Grosjean putting together a quiet, smooth, problem-free weekend. There might not be a driver who has been caught on camera falling out with their team or caught on the radio screaming at another driver for what is just racing early in the race or whatever. So fantastic for that team to finally find some what looks to be stability, and hopefully that can be something they can build on. Somebody who
Hmm.
doesn't need any more stability to build on is Alex Palou, who I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm probably the worst at math of anybody in this call, is back at the top of the championship standings.
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Yes. Oh boy. We talked about this heading into the month of May a bit. Alex Palou has this tendency to just put together entire seasons that are deadly. Do we have to start, you know, ringing the alarm bells again? Because Tom and I got on the pit straight and started to ring them right after the Sunseal Grand Prix on the Indy Road Course. Tom, is it over?
I won't say that. I won't go that far, Alex, just because he did have that incident at Detroit, right? So that was able to it was almost like he gave a welfare check to the entire paddock and said, "Here, guys, I'm going to give this one to you. All right, take this." And it allowed for a couple of races where guys ended up catching up. But I'm looking at the points, Will Power is still there and he's been running well. Here's the difference though. Alex Will Power has 7 top 10s, which is the same as Alex Palou, but 4 of his top 10s are top 5s. Alex has 7 top 5s out of those top 10s. So every top 10 he has this year has been in the top 5. The dude is just on a tear, like historic. We've talked about it all the time. And I knew when he was running second today, and it's in my notes when I was doing the recap, it said, this looks like it's going to be Palou's race. It is going to work out that way. That was when he was running second to Kirkwood. And then the whole pit stop thing said, and the NBC makes it sound like, oh my gosh, he's on the wrong strategy. And I just thought to myself, these dudes are wrong. I'm wrong. I completely expect this to work out for Palou. I believe what NBC is telling me, but I don't buy it. And it ends up working out for him. I mean, the dude stretched it out to what, a 25-second lead to be able. And then when he came out after that pit stop, he was in third or fourth. He dropped to fourth. I can't remember, third, fourth, whatever it was. And he held it together and he held off like 314 different restarts at the end of the race. So when you're doing that, I mean, isn't it amazing how much he's just so much like Scott Dixon? When he gets up there, you just go, man, this thing is going to work out for him. Same
Mhm.
for Scott Dixon. I mean, it's just like Scott Dixon sitting there just brushing off some of his little flakes and going, here you go, Alex, you can be like me now.
You know, one thing that I'm glad you mentioned that I thought might get a bit overlooked by the time that this race came to an end, and I think it did because there was just so much chaos at the end. Christopher, Kyle Kirkwood put on a hell of a defense against Palou for that first. what would you call it, like the first quarter, maybe a third of the race. How? That was an uncharacteristically strong and elbows out performance from Kirkwood.
I'm not sure if it was necessarily defensive from Kirkwood as much as it was Alex just putting himself in Kirkwood's mirrors and saying, if you make a mistake, I'm gonna go by you. I believe the term is playing with your food, and I believe that's what Alex was doing to Kyle. I mean, we saw it um, throughout the race in that when Palou wanted to take off, he could. Um, he was just on another level, just on another operating plane altogether. And yeah, if he wanted to get by Kirkwood, he would have gotten by Kirkwood. It was
Mm,
just a matter of let's not, let's just let him make the mistake and we'll just reap the benefits of it. I think um that's what the big situation was going on at the beginning of the race. I mean, yeah, we can make the argument, yeah, Kirkwood was defending all over the place. Kirkwood didn't have to do any of that stuff. Alex was not going to make a serious overtaking move against him unless he absolutely needed to. Below had him right where he wanted him.
man, we've got some strong appraisals of the 10 team from you guys, so it kind of sounds like it might be over.
We still got
Well, to
plenty
be
of
fair,
time. It's still plenty of
I
time because, as I mentioned in the preview, what do we have that's coming up that Palou has not shown consistently he can win at? And that's ovals. Besides Indianapolis, he has not won on ovals. In fact, he hasn't won on ovals at all, but he has
no,
competed
he
really
hasn't.
well at 500. So Will Power's sitting there going, you know what? Do what you do right now, Alex, because when we get to Iowa, we know what Penske does there. When we get to Gateway, we know what Power's going to do there. Milwaukee, who knows? Nashville, who
Powers
knows?
won there.
But yeah,
Yeah.
he's won back there, and he's one of the few drivers that will actually have turned laps there before in anger too. So, um, but that, you know what? That's exactly what we thought last year. We thought Joseph Newgarden was going to sit there and come back and chase and make a run of it at the end, and he kind of did with his sweep at Iowa, but then it didn't work out. Palou got top fives or whatever at Gateway, blah blah, and he ended up being able to hold off Dixon. So, we say that to hopefully get people excited for
Right.
the rest of the year, but in the back of our minds, we're going, yeah, it's over.
Yeah, no,
The only
it's
saving grace for the rest of the field, the only saving grace for the rest of the field is that after 8 races last year, Palou had 324 points. After 8 races this year, he only has 285. So he's 39 points down on where he was last year. And of course, last year, this was after 8 races, he had just won his second race in a row out of a 3 race stretch. So there's still some time left for the rest of the field to catch him. And Willpower is second, 23 points behind. I want to bring up one more thing about Willpower here, real quick,
mhm,
before we get on to anything else. Willpower started 15th. He was 25th or 26th, I
Hmm.
think, at the end of the first lap of the race. Like, I got this chart right here. He was last at the end of lap one.
mhm,
How he went from last to all the way up to where he was running actually right out at the outer edge of the top five for a large part of the race.
Hmm.
Um, and he finished seventh. That is a remarkable drive. That is how you maximize like what you can maximize on a bad
Right.
day. To go from 15th to last to seventh is a remarkable job, and that is something that the 12 team should be very proud of. Sure, it's not a top five, but when you think about where you started the race, that's a
mhm.
remarkable job.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of performances 2022. You don't need to win every race if you can still perform like that on your bad days.
Yeah.
Until your opponent ends up being Alex Palou, who doesn't have bad days. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's right. Remember when Power won in 22, that was like Palou's like worst year with Ganassi, so he
mhm.
was
And he
able
closed
to
that he closed that out with a win at Laguna Seca, ironically
he
enough.
did, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are just about out of time, so one more thing that I want to ask you guys before we close this out. Finally, assuming that no other gremlins arise or no divine intervention happens, we're gonna get hybrids next time out of Mid-Ohio.
Hmm.
What can we expect? This is a bit of an uncharted territory for the series, and it's been delayed and hushed and swept around so much. Are we flying completely blind, or is there anything we can draw from it?
I don't know what to expect. And I think that that's kind of cool in its own right because it's going to be this unknown. But at the same time, eventually these teams are super smart. They're going to figure it out. But I do look forward to the strategy aspect of it and how drivers are going to manipulate, not manipulate, but use to their figure out their own personal strategies of how best to use this. And then do it. What I found interesting about it, and I don't know about you two, but Graham Rahal said specifically at one point, I didn't get raised playing video games, so all the stuff they have to do in the controls with it, I didn't realize how heavy of a burden it was on the drivers to engage the system.
Mm.
And we were talking about this a second ago before we came on air. When I play my son in Fortnite, he whoops my butt because I can't do all the control stuff that he does, like zooming in and killing me and stuff. So I can't imagine what those guys are going to be doing when they're going to have to like take the keyhole, when they're going to have to go through, Thunder Valley, all that type of stuff. That's going to be incredible to watch.
For me, my biggest takeaway, first of all, these teams have done thousands of miles of testing with
Mhm.
the hybrid system. The biggest difference that I'm going to see, what was the big controversy near the end of Laguna Seca? It was the holding of the yellow flag to allow
Mhm.
Joseph Newgarden to pit because the pits would have been closed because Marcus Armstrong's car was stranded at the side of the track. With the hybrids, the drivers can start the cars themselves and they won't have to wait for the AMR or GMR. I think it's GMR
It's
nowadays.
AMR.
AMR, yeah.
Yeah, AMR.
The insert letter here, MR team,
The
safety
simple
team.
green safety team. I remember
Yes,
that.
you won't need to wait for the safety team to come around and restart you so that you can keep going. You'll be able to start the engine up yourself again, even if it's hot, and you'll be able to keep going. Practice sessions will be quicker. You won't have nearly as many red flags in qualifying, so
Mm.
hopefully less penalties. And you'll be able to see, situations like what happened today in today's race won't happen again in the future, not nearly as often, because the drivers will be able to start themselves up and get going again. Um, it's incredible. It's good. That's a good thing. We should be embracing that. It's like having onboard starters for the first time ever. Um, so that should be embraced. There will be obviously some people that will say, oh, hybrid this, blah, 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 blah. They're not taking away the sound of the cars. I've heard these cars test in person. I can't tell a difference. And I've been going to IndyCar races since the 90s. I can't hear barely any kind of difference at all when they're testing, whether it's hybrid or straight up internal combustion engine. So they're not going to lose anything by going to this. In fact, if anything, yeah, it's going to be slightly slower because there's a lot of weight. But once the system is really refined and they're able to increase the power output that the hybrid system gives out, these cars are going to go faster, a lot faster.
And I am curious about how, so for push to pass, they always show that on the NBC broadcast. How are they
Yes.
going to educate, not about the system, but just tracking where they are in the data, where they are in the regeneration process, how they're going to integrate that into the broadcast? Because I mean, I'm not saying that the technology isn't there, but I'm going to be curious if they're going to be up on the edge of tracking all that data so the fans can understand because they're going to have push to pass and this hybrid regeneration energy.
Mhm.
So, how are they going to be able to communicate that to not only the fans, but also those who are in attendance? That's going to be something that needs to be looked at in the future.
That's probably going to be a question for some of the people in the IndyCar web department because I know one of my friends named David who works for IndyCar in the technical department. He actually did an entire redesign of the website and the timing and scoring for us at home.
Hmm.
I think he's going to have a bit part to play in how this system gets put on the broadcast and how the graphics are going to look a little bit with NBC, because you're gonna obviously want to know when the drivers are on the hybrid boost system
Mhm.
during the race, which from my recollection is unlimited during the races. The push to pass is limited, but the hybrid boost itself is not limited. Um, but that's going to be something that IndyCar and NBC are going to have to work out. I think it's also worth noting that with the hybrid boost and push to pass activated at the same time, you're going to see these engines making over 800 horsepower, which is awesome to hear.
Mhm.
100%. And when that gets rolled out, we, Front Stretch, will be on site at Mid-Ohio to hopefully do the post-race conversation in person, which will be fantastic. And, that's a classic racetrack. We always get something interesting. It's one of those tracks that even if there's not a ton of action, it's just beautiful to watch these machines
Hmm.
navigate the elevation change and the corners. And if you want to follow along with all that, we will have coverage on frontstretch.com, on Twitter at Front Stretch and Front Stretch Open Wheel, on YouTube at Front Stretch and Front Stretch Open Wheel, on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you get your podcasts. The best seat at the track is the best view on the net, and we will be there. I can be found on Twitter at Alex Gintz1. Christopher is at C DeHarde, and Tom is at Tom Blackburn 42. And onward and upward with yet another awesome chapter of the 2024 IndyCar season in the books.
Hey, it's Tony Donahue from FrontStretch.com. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and return to our channel for more racing content.